This is Game Design 101. It's all about games, as you might imagine, and designing them theoretically. Let's go down our lineup here. We'll introduce ourselves, then we'll start talking about it for a little bit, and then we'll take some questions from the audience.
I'm Weinberg. I'm like new into this game designing thing. I'm working for this man right here. So he'll introduce himself in a second. I've been a gamer for I don't know how many years. I've been going to conventions for probably even longer. So I know a lot about game theory, and I learned it in a roundabout way through college, and I'm excited to be in the industry now. So I'm like the young guy. So I'll have questions, and you'll be like,
"Don't brag."
Yeah.
Come on.
Don't brag. Oh God, that makes us the old guys.
I guess so.
Oh, God.
Makes me the old guy.
All right. I am Jeffrey Dohm, better known as Dread in the gaming industry. Okay. I worked for AG for God knows how long. Yeah, 10 years maybe. We're call that one. And then we branched out on our own, created a company called Industrial Dream Mills, which has one of the first American steampunk role-playing games to hit the market. All right. So, and this is the Archon only edition of our standalone. Yes, plug. So the name of the role-playing line is Steam Fortress Victory. Other stuff I've done. Worked on World's Largest Dungeon, 7th Sea, Legend of the Five Rings, Warlord. I mean, it's a long list. So
That's good.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
What do you got?
Nothing. My name is Forbeck. I've been doing this for some 20 years on and off. Well, actually, entirely full-time. Ever since I got out of college back in 1989. It's a long time ago, 23 years now.
He's got a lot.
Yeah. For most of that time, I was a freelance full-time game developer, game designer. I founded a company called Pinnacle Entertainment Group, which did Deadlands, Brave New World, Hell on Earth, a whole bunch of other stuff. I ran that company as president for 4 years with Shane Hensley, who was my co-founder. And after that, I went back into full-time game design freelance. These days, I mostly do novels. I've got my 13th novel just shipped last month for the Guild Wars MMO. It's called Guild Wars Ghosts of Ascalon. And my 14th novel will be out in November in the UK and January in the US, and that's called Immortals. It's my first original novel, meaning by that it's a non-tie-in novel. And that'll be out from Angry Robot. And most of these days, besides that, I do computer games, toys, and a little bit of tabletop game design as well.
Oh, we work on movies too.
And movies too, yeah. And whatever else, toy design. I'll write grocery lists if I have to. So that's what we do. Now, Game Design 101, so you guys are here to learn a little bit about how you design games, I understand, right? What kind of games are you guys interested in? I mean, for instance, who's interested in role-playing games? Okay. How about board games? Card games? Nobody cares about card games.
You're out, man.
Yeah.
You can go now.
Okay, so most of it's role-playing game, board game kind of guys. That's cool. There are just a lot of different ways to go about game design. If you're trying to get into game design, there's mostly what you have to do, there's two ways to go about it. If you're trying to get into role-playing game design, the best idea is to try to write supplements for somebody else's stuff first, right? And the idea there is you find a game that you like a lot, that you're playing a lot. And the reason I recommend this is not because that your role-playing game that you're sitting on that you've developed it in your basement and you think is the best thing ever that's going to revolutionize the world, and very well made, and I'm not trying to mock it. You don't know what you're doing yet, right? Because you don't know anything about the publishing industry and how it works in most cases. So it's better off if you could actually learn those things while working on somebody else's projects, right? That way you're basically being paid to learn, which is a good thing to do. The other way to do things is to design something from scratch entirely yourself and either try to find a publisher or publish it yourself. I recommend that you find a publisher, right? Now, having said that, most companies in the gaming industry were originally founded by people who wanted to publish their own games, right? But you will look at those companies and discover that most of the times, the founders of those companies have actually they've either gone bankrupt or the founders have gone on to become business people as opposed to game designers, right? Because being a business person who runs a company and being a game designer are two entirely different skill sets, and they're two entirely different modes of work. So even though for instance, John Zinsser, who got into doing games, wanted to do his own games and founded All Direct Entertainment Group with a couple other guys. And John, I think, finally had his first board game published after 15 years.
Was it 15?
It was a long time.
Well, he had Shadis, though.
Yeah, but Shadis is a magazine. It wasn't really a magazine.
So there's-
John Nephew, who does Atlas Games, started out doing it as his own thing for publishing his own stuff. Never publishes his own stuff at all anymore. Really. His wife just had a game published this year, but she married into the company about 5 years after he founded it, right? If you're going to start your own game company, there's a lot of good ways to do it, but it's a very open industry. Find somebody who's done it before and talk to them. Most of us will be happy to talk to you for the cost of a meal or a beer. Okay?
especially if you're.
Especially
beer.
more beers the better, right?
What about
But-
meal and a beer?
And that's even better.
Oh, wow.
See, there's a winner right there.
That's a couple, 2 to 3 hours of our time right there.
Right. Because, you know, most of us, we had people help us out on the way up. And that's one of the reasons we're here tonight, is that we're happy to talk to people and try to share some knowledge that we've gained so that hopefully you don't make some of the same mistakes that we did, right? You'll make all brand new mistakes, but at least they'll be yours and then you'll be able to teach the next generation about how not to fuck it up the way we did. Thank you. So, I mean, if you have a game that you want to publish or you want to get out there, I suggest that what you do for your first game is find a publisher. And that means find somebody who publishes games like what you're going to do or what you want to do, and then approach them, right? Every game company has a website nowadays. You can go to the website, you can find, often they'll have submission guidelines. So you go to the submission guidelines, you read them, you follow them to the letter, and then you turn your stuff in. They say, I want a query, which is just a one-page letter, you send that in. They say when they want a full box, you send that in, whatever they ask for. There was one game company for years, I think it was Steve Jackson for many years in the 90s, that had something on page 2 of their guidelines that said, on page 2 of your submission, you write this following 3-letter code in the upper right-hand corner. Right? Why did they do that?
Details.
Make sure you read the rules, right? If you weren't able to actually follow that amount of instruction from them, they figured you were not going to be somebody they wanted to work with in the future. And it was a little gotcha kind of thing. And that's, you know, Steve's a little gotcha kind of guy, so that's what happens. But and what I'm saying is try to follow the rules that they put out in front of you. There are reasons for those rules. There's reasons that they have them in place. One thing you also see when you submit a game to a company, I'm monopolizing the time here, guys, I'm sorry.
No, you're doing a great job.
You'll see that they ask you to sign what's called a waiver. Okay, and the waiver says, if we publish something exactly like this game at any time in the future, you cannot sue us. Right? And as a new game designer, you will look at that and say, they're allowing me, I'm signing this to allow them to rate me. Right? And you'll say, no, I can't do that. 99.9 times out of 100, this will not happen to you. Right? I actually know one instance in the entire 23 years I've been doing this where somebody had a game stolen from them and published by another company. And it was actually the wrestling card game that was published by Wizards of the Coast. The guy had originally showed it to a company called Comic Images. And Comic Images said, no, we don't want that. Then they found out Wizards was doing the same game. And they said, oh, we had this design submitted to us. We'll just take that into our own game. Right? Now, of course, Wizards was happy to sue these guys on behalf of their writer, their game designer. So it worked out very well for him because he got royalties from both games. So don't complain. But, so when you see a waiver like that put in front of you, don't panic. I mean, it's a natural tendency to think that somebody's going to rip you off when it says, we can rip you off, essentially, in the text, right? That means you're reading properly. But there's a reason for that. And the reason is that we're all swimming in the same cultural soup. We're all watching the same movies. We're all playing the same other games. We're all reading the same books. And because of that, we have a thing that develops called parallel development, which means that if I have a great idea for a horror role-playing game, chances are good that 16 other people have the same idea for a similar kind of horror role-playing game at about the same time. Right? The year I came out with a game called Brave New World, which was a superhero role-playing game from Pinnacle, there had not been any new superhero role-playing games for 5 years before that. There were 7 that year. Okay? And it wasn't because we were copying off each other or looking over each other's shoulders. It's just that a lot of us thought, hey, it's been a long goddamn time. It's about time we do one of these. When we did Deadlands, which was a weird Western game, right? Nobody had ever done a horror Western game before. We're like, we got to be safe with that, right? 6 months into our development, a game there's a game from White Wolf comes out. There's an advertisement in the back for Werewolf the Wild West. Like, how the hell did that happen? It's because we're all doing the same things. And honestly, if we had submitted something to them that said they could develop something equal to them, they would have said, oh shit, these guys are doing something similar to us. We can't buy this game. Or they would have said, let's buy this game and incorporate them into our game. Right?